Hello and welcome everyone. So I'm Vivek, product manager here at Apptentive, and today I'm super excited to be joined by three amazing product experts who will introduce themselves in just a minute. So our product experts here, please go ahead and turn on your cameras now so we can see all your wonderful faces. And hey, Katie. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Doug. So we're going to be doing a conversational panel today where I asked them some fun and important questions regarding product management, product marketing, and go to market as well. And typically this would happen over a cup of coffee in real life. I'm trying to, get that feel with my background here, but we're taking it remote this time with Zoom. So before we start, a couple of general housekeeping stuff. If you have anything you want to ask us about the topics being covered today, or about customer feedback or communication tips in general, please just submit your questions in the open-ended Q&A field in Zoom. We'll be taking a look there. So you can see the Q&A button in the center at the bottom of your screen. And if we run out of time to answer your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you afterwards. So please make sure to add your name when you're logged into the Zoom, because we can use that when looking at the chat history later on. So we encourage all you to ask questions or discuss in the chat section here as well. And be sure to select your message to go to attendees and panelists and not just the panelists, so we can, everyone can see the questions coming in. So, and finally, we're going to be sharing out a link for people that couldn't make it and signed up for the webinar. So later this week, we'll send that out via an email. So yeah, with that, let's get started. So I would love to just have, first off, each of our panelists, just introduce yourself. So I would love to know your name, your title, where are you working right now? What do you love most about that job? And most importantly, what's your favorite coffee?
Well, I can go first. So I'm Katie Gillespie. I work at Redfin, which for those of you who aren't familiar is a tech-enabled real estate brokerage. So we both have a search site for people to find homes online. And we also have agents who help you actually buy those homes. So a little bit on both sides of the transaction, both buy and sell. So I'm a lead product manager for our online search products. So basically, if you go to redfin.com, most of what you see there is something that my team manages, not everything and not anything on the agent side, but a lot of the consumer search products. And so, yeah, my favorite part of my actual day-to-day part of my job is really just the complexity of the problems we work on. Real estate is such an important thing in people's lives. People, buy homes only so often. And when they do, it makes such a big impact on their everyday life. So everything I get to work on is both really challenging and also really important to people. And the people I work with all feel the same feel that it's really important. And so it's just a lot of fun to dig in on how we make that experience better for people. And then, my favorite coffee, my actual favorite coffee right now is just the drip coffee from the coffee shop around the corner. I did not realize how different drip coffees could be until I went to this place, and it just blew my mind how good it was. So I go there probably too frequently and just buy drip coffee and walk back home with it. So that's been one nice thing about the pandemic, is I get to work very close to that coffee shop.
That's awesome. Thank you, Katie, for sharing that.
I'll go next.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Speedy. I am at T-Mobile. I've been here for 15 years in a number of different roles, but where I am today is I am in marketing for our T-Mobile Tuesdays customer appreciation program. And I lead a team that's focused on a number of areas, but go to market, insights, analytics, program performance, and partnership management. So kind of a multi-hat wearer here, which kind of leads to the answer of what do I love about my job? So I guess the first thing is that, every Tuesday we give our customers thank you just for being customers. We don't kind of tie strings or points or other things like loyalty programs do. And so it's kind of makes it fun. So every week we get to celebrate our customers and give our loyalty to them rather than just always expect it from us, them giving it to us. And so the variety is great. So, we're not doing the same thing every week. We're surprising and delighting customers with different partnerships. And it's something I get a lot of satisfaction from, is working with third-party partners and, across different verticals like restaurants and movies and streaming and all these different other things that we get to do for, for customers every week. And then coffee, I don't drink coffee. I never have. I can't stand it. So my substitute is I'll have a Diet Pepsi or a Coke Zero or something like that to give me my caffeine hit.
Thanks for sharing, Doug. I'm much on the same, but I actually love tea myself, so I'm glad you're able to come out and be honest about your type of coffee.
Yeah, to my wife's chagrin, she would love if I just would share a cup of coffee with her.
Nice, nice. Yeah, Jeff, would love to hear from your side.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Jeffrey Lee. I'm with the product management at Disney. I'm sure you all heard of the company. The Disney is a very big organization. The org I'm in is belong to the park and resorts. I'm sure you've probably been been to one of the Disney resorts or park in the past. We do have 6 parks worldwide, including 2 in the US. And then, the role that I'm responsible for, right, is digitization of all the product and services for the domestic park and also for our international, Shanghai and Hong Kong as well. And what I like about my job is, we know, right, Disney has been branded as the happiest place on the planet. So everything we do touch the customers in all ages of their life, right, in near real time. Anything that we push out the next minute, the guests are in the park will be starting to enjoy it. And then with the latest product launch, Genie, right, that is something that if you go to Disney World, you're going to hear and see how people are enjoying, the guests are enjoying about that experience. When it comes to coffee, I'm learning about the pour over. I think one thing that I do fascinating about coffee is you can have the same bag of beans, but the way how you grind it, the way how you brew it, it comes totally different. So espresso, just the way how the brewing method, it's not the bean itself. So I sample that as doing espresso pour over drip coffee using the same bag of bean and do a blind test. And my friend was so fascinated how it can be coming from the same bag of of beans. So yeah, that's kind of what I know about coffee.
Nice. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Jeffrey. And yeah, totally. It sounds like similar thing with Katie, even with drip coffee, like you could do it in so many different ways. Like I love the science of coffee. It's really fascinating. So
Sounds like some product managers here, like testing and figuring out which is the different.
That doesn't sound right at all.
doesn't feel like it fits the persona of the people here at all. Yeah, so that's actually a great segue. So I would love for each of you to share kind of how you got to where you are today. What did your path to product management look like on, Katie and Jeffrey on your side, and on your side, Doug, like how did your path to product marketing and go to market look like? I would just love for each of y'all to kind of just share your background.
Well, I'm happy to go first again. So I started at Redfin right out of college, actually, as a marketing coordinator on email marketing. I graduated college. I was a math major, but I didn't have any internships or any practical experience whatsoever. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I started out at Redfin working on email marketing, running experiments, writing email campaigns, connecting with customers that way. And I found that I really loved the experimentation and analytical side of it, but I was just not as good at the creative side of it. That's a really important skill set for reaching out to customers well. And that was just like not the area I was as excited about. So I started focusing on our tech side, working on basically building database integrations between our email marketing software and internal databases, and got really excited about the software side of it. So I had an opportunity to work with a PM on a project for marketing software that was internally built as opposed to the integrations I was doing with an external software, basically proposing a new kind of software that we would build, and that got approved. And so I got an opportunity to become the PM for the team that was going to build this software. So it was kind of a nice segue from marketing into technical integrations with marketing into internal building tools for marketing. And then from there, I transitioned over to working on our consumer facing software. So I worked on 2 teams as an individual contributor, first on this experimentation software, and then on our notifications, working on email and push and our feed for letting people know about new homes. And then about a month ago, I took on the role I'm on now as lead product manager. So this is a new role for me. And yeah, that's my path.
Thank you, Katie. Congratulations on the recent promotion, by the way. Really excited to hear that. And yeah, thank you for sharing your journey. I mean, it seems like you went from the beginning, like experimentation to database integrations, and now really excited to share that. We know every journey is very different. So yeah, thanks for sharing. So Jeffrey or Doug, would one of you like to go next?
I can go. As you alluded to, I'm not technically a product manager, so but I'm still excited, and I help inform our product in my current role. So my path at T-Mobile has been kind of across multiple teams and multiple roles. So I've started in project management and program management, and kind of brought that organizational structure to the way I work, and have kind of progressed into sales operations and field team support, and then marketing. So integrated marketing, segment marketing, and product marketing across various things that T-Mobile has launched over the years. And now, I work on a program that's, we're a kind of quasi loyalty. Again, we don't call ourselves a loyalty program, but we kind of play in that space. And the core component of our program is our T-Mobile Tuesdays app, which is a product and has tons of things that we want to do from an experience standpoint and engagement and compliance and all sorts of things that we have to do, of course, to stay on top of things. So my team, brings the insights and the findings and the behavioral data and all the other things that help inform our product roadmap and decision making. So we're integrated into the product experience, even though we're not technically product managers. And I think my background, and this is, I encourage this even of the people that I work with and hire, is, having that frontline experience and understanding how product work and what our customers are going through and what our front teams are going through. It's like all of that stuff should be helping inform product as well. So, I think that's something I would encourage anybody as they think about their path is, having a variety and in your career path, can be really beneficial down the road.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Doug. I can only imagine like the amount of amazing offers T-Mobile Tuesdays turns out each week, and the amount of like, coordination and like making them look nice to like making it engaging. Like the fact that you're able to put that together in a week is just really amazing. So thank you for sharing that background. And Jeffrey, would love to hear from your side.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, my role to product manager or in the product management field, it's by accident, to be honest. I was supposed to be, because of my background in different disciplines in business, in finance, in engineering, and in mathematics, statistics. I was thinking to go head down to the financial, either working in Wall Street or somewhere in San Francisco to become hedge fund manager. But because of my electrical engineering background, I said, hey, I know you may want to try the engineering, field in the meantime. Well, I was getting my designation for to be a hedge fund manager. They say, hey, you could be a good product manager. We'd like to try this role. And it's how I end up, how the company positioned me, say, because of my mixed background, you could be a very good product manager because you know all the areas and be able to talk to them in their different languages. And it's how I started. And I never look back, because it was so much fun and the impact. I think what really attracted me is the impact that the product manager is making in all the products you're working on. And I just, went from, hey, okay, I can try this for a year and see where it goes, because I may pack and go to New York, and I'm staying. And more than 2 decades later, I'm still product manager, and I continue to enjoy doing this job every day.
Thank you for sharing that, Jeffrey. I know, we've been talking together, as customers and partners. I had no idea that you came from a hedge fund management background. It's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Again, just goes to show that product management can come from, and product marketing can come from so many different backgrounds. So thank you all for sharing your story there. And what I love about all three of the panelists here is that you all come from different industries, and you're working on different parts of the product area. So I'd love to know, what trends have you noticed in your specific industry, like as of right now, and where do you kind of see that changing in the next 2 to 5 years? Like, would love to kind of hear some of your thoughts on what you're kind of see happening in the future.
Well, I can go first this time, and less about trends of where I think things are going. And maybe this is true. Again, this is where the more of the operations and marketing side of me comes out, is that I'm more about thinking, where do we need to go next? Less than where do I think the world is going next. And so for us, and this may be a buzzword that's used too commonly in the product management space, but personalization is kind of a space that where we need to evolve, and we're working on things in that area now. But T-Mobile, we want a connection to our customers that's deeper than just the traditional cellular wireless plan experience. And we do that, through 5G and connections and all those sorts of things that are, make it so we're an integral part of their daily life on that side of the house. But with our program, we're looking at ways to thank customers every single week in ways that are meaningful to them. And so, to date, we picked partnerships where we can with the largest brands that have the most reach geographically, or are likely to have most people interested. But there's, for every cup of coffee that we give a customer, there's a bunch of Dougs out there who get no value from that. And so, do they feel appreciated in a week where we might give away coffee and a couple other things that don't fit? They might not. And so, getting to a personalized experience using machine learning and profile and other things that we want to start developing, and tracking their behavioral things and get their preferences and all these type of things that you can do to deliver that kind of one-to-one experience. My boss has used the term where right now we're giving thankings to everybody, we're thanking our customers, but now we want to switch it to to thank you. So like you as an individual, when you open T-Mobile Tuesdays on a given week, that there's going to be something there that's relevant to your daily life, or it's going to help fill a gap, or do something for your family, or whatever it is that we're there. And so the product is going to have to evolve quite a lot to get to a point where we're getting to personalization. And then as the go-to-market owner, I start to freak out, because that means like how many offers I have to build and all that stuff. So I'm not thinking about that too much right now, and really focusing on where we want to get the customer experience.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that as a customer, like that seems like the perfect, most amazing experience for me. So it's really exciting that you share like that's where you're headed. So thank you. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. Yeah, Katie or Jeffrey, would you like to share next?
Yeah, but go ahead, Katie.
There you go ahead.
Yeah, so one thing, I think is the trend, right? One thing I noticed that in my 20 plus years of the product manager life, one thing you have to ask is, the product manager 20 years ago is different than the product manager currently. So how do you observe the trend and be able to adapt? And at the same time, don't be afraid of asking the questions. And sometimes product manager, they be always thinking about the shiny object, what's next. But sometimes you do need to look what you have right now and use the tool or the product and make it better. You look at what's happening in all the industry right now. Look at automotive industry, right? You've been driving a car for the past 20, 30 years, and look at where the car it is right now. And normally it's the product, the leader, the vision, who has a vision to willing to transform, right? The battery that you use today is still the battery that you used probably in 1970s, right? When you put it into your remote control car, and the battery still, AAA, AA, but because of Tesla, right? Now the whole battery industry is changing, right? So you do need to, so as a product visionary, you need to think about how can I make things better, and keep asking the right questions and drive that product vision forward. It's working now, doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. It didn't work yesterday, didn't mean it's going to work in the future. So you need to, keep asking yourself and look at what is happening out there, and how do you turn from the red ocean to blue ocean. That is key, right? And I think that's that's the difference between a good product manager versus a mediocre, because mediocre product manager tend to follow, and they don't really have a trend of mindset of their own. But the good product manager, they will seek opportunities and be able to excel.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jeff. I mean, totally understand, like maintaining your core while also making sure you don't get disrupted in your space and you disrupt in other spaces makes a lot of sense. So thank you for sharing that. And Katie, yeah, please, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
So my answer is a little more zoomed, I guess maybe in a different direction, maybe not zoomed out or in, but I wanted to just like talk about a trend in the real estate industry that I found really interesting, which is one of the things that is most challenging about buying a home for people is just that there are only so many homes out there, and they are not that many. And once they're gone, they're gone. And so if you don't buy a home that often. And so you're like constantly looking to see, is this the right home? You're trying to fight to win the one that you want. There's so much competition. It can be really stressful because there's just such a limited inventory of homes that are available and will match your criteria. So one really interesting trend that connects to this in real estate is iBuying, which you might have heard of. But basically iBuying is where a company, for example, Redfin, or Zillow or Open Door, the other two companies who've been doing this in the past, will basically buy your home from you for cash. So that can be really advantageous for sellers for a few reasons. One, they have sort of a guaranteed offer. They know exactly how much it's going to be. They can move whenever they want. They don't have to like try and time up the buying and the selling. They can just like pick a date. It happens really fast. It's just much more straightforward. The downside is it costs more for a seller. Like you don't get quite as much money because we take a fee for it, but can be just much easier for sellers. And so what's really interesting is that if you think about this, if you think about the cost of moving houses is really hard for people. So people don't do it very often. It's financially risky. It's a big pain. So because people are moving less often, there's fewer homes on the market. But if we use a feature like iBuying to make it easier for people to sell their houses and to move, and in general, if we invest in ways of making it easier for people to move, we can reduce that friction and get people moving through homes more often so that they are more able to get to a home that fits their current lifestyle instead of like waiting and being like, I don't really like this house, but I don't want to move because it's so hard. Just making that transaction easier and more seamless for people will mean that people move through homes more quickly, and moving through homes more quickly means there's more inventory for other people to move into those homes. So we think about like really zooming out at the future of real estate. If you think about like, how can we actually make real estate better for people? One way is by reducing the friction to selling and buying a home. So iBuying is one way to play into that. And it's really interesting about whether that will be able to scale to meet that demand or whether it is fundamentally a limited thing. So there's been news recently about iBuying, people worried about taking up too much market share and affecting home prices. Realistically, right now, I wish we were large enough to affect market prices, but it's still teeny tiny. Some people have had, issues with scaling the business. So there's a lot of questions right now about really whether iBuying will be able to scale to a large enough size to actually make that difference. But I think it's really interesting because we could radically change how people experience buying and selling by making it easier to buy and sell.
Oh, thank you, Katie, for sharing that. I had no idea about iBuying. I feel like I learned a lot there. Thank you for sharing that. And I recently just moved from my apartment last week, and I just moved from an apartment to another, apartment, like home to home. I can only imagine the amount of pain. I feel like I'm still recovering from that. So that makes a lot of sense, like the kind of friction you're trying to ease there. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. All of you for kind of sharing, what kind of things you're focused on, you're excited to work on. And I would love to ask another question on a different area now. So I know all of you, even though you work in different industries, care a lot about your customers. So Katie, on the Redfin side, you're a milestone moment in someone's life of buying a house, or, Jeffrey, on your side of trying to create the most, magical experience someone could have in a park, and Doug on your side, make sure your customers feel loved and heard, and like you're giving them great offers to, let them feel loyal. So during that kind of process, like what have been your favorite ways to connect and get feedback from your customers throughout this process? Like we'd just love to know kind of what are some of your favorite ways to do that?
I can go again. I know it's maybe self-serving to the host of this event, but Apptentive is a way that we collect a lot of information from our customers, and we love it specifically. Again, we have this weekly engagement. Essentially it's an appointment with our customers that we share, and we kind of celebrate and have fun every week together. And we use our surveys extensively. I would call us power users. I'm sure that you guys would agree, those that support us on the Apptentive side. So, probably 200 to 250 times a year, we're surveying customers on a Tuesday, the things from kind of brand sentiment and app love, and trying to drive, kind of good App Store reviews, and some of those kind of always on. But every single week we have multiple ad hoc surveys where we're asking our customers questions around which kind of offer categories are they interested in. Like we just did one recently around movie going. Are you going back to the movies after COVID? Are you watching more at home? What's your favorite genre? Those types of things. How comfortable are you? Do you buy popcorn? All those people. I'm trying to get customer behavior and sentiment. We'll ask about specific partnerships or an offer that we may have just run. We gave away a free Wendy's bacon sandwich or something like that, and what did the customer ever have that before? Did they buy anything else besides the thing that we gave them? Are they more likely or less likely to go back to Wendy's with or without, Tuesdays being involved? So a lot of partner sentiment. But then from a product standpoint, as we're ideating on new features and new engagement tactics, we'll use our surveys to get that feedback directly and find out, how likely they are to use this feature, or if we've already launched something, what did you think of it? Like, we launched geo-targeting in our offers last year. And so we've done a ton of follow-up surveys. Did you see this special offer that was just for you? And, what did you think of it? And how, was the feature easy to use? Those type of things. So, that's just a small example of the over 200 things that we use Apptentive for in a given year. We don't stop there. We do additional, research tactics and UX, and we do social monitoring, and App Store reviews are another source that for information that we use to kind of glean those insights. But I love our weekly surveys and how quick and easy it is to get feedback in a short amount of time to decision makers.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Doug. One question I had, like when you have an offer you're about to send out, do you already have a set of questions you want to ask them prepared, or like are you listening or watching how the offers are performing and then you're like, okay, let's come up with
It's probably a mixture of both.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done this enough. We're doing, we're 5.5 years into the program now, and when you have 250 to 300 different offers a year that we're running, so like we kind of have a system in place for most of what we do.
Mhm.
But here's an example. A couple of weeks ago for Halloween, we did this thing. We have this character that we branded called Frankenstein. It's our little Halloween character, our magenta Frankenstein character. And so this year we hid him on a 5G set page on our website. And so we used the app to kind of tease people to say, hey, go on a scavenger hunt, and if you find Frankenstein, you can get a gift card. And it was, we always do this. We break partners all the time because our traffic is so high and engagement is there. And even though we try to get partners and to scale up and be ready for the hit, it never sometimes, or it isn't always the case that they're ready for it. And so in this case, we broke our own website in some ways because the customers went out of our app into the website, and the traffic was just too overwhelming. And so we did a post-campaign survey to find out how often, how difficult was it for people? How long did they have to wait? Did they give up? Did they, was the clue that we gave them helpful or not? And so that's an example of one where we did that post-campaign fact finding rather than something that we had prepared in advance.
Wow, thank you for sharing that example. I mean, that shows it kind of full circle and like trying to learn like what they liked about the experience, but also like what they like had troubles with as well, possibly, right? Like, because
Yeah, part of the goal of doing this mechanic was to drive people to an education page, that's outside of the app, and so they can learn about how T-Mobile is expanding its 5G network and the advantages of upgrading to those types of phones. And and in the end, we'll find out how many people actually read anything once they got there. If it was really just, give me my code and let me go. So
right, exactly, right. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that, Doug. Yeah, Katie or Jeffrey, would love to hear from your side.
Yeah, I can talk. I think one of the things that I most enjoy and that I think makes my thinking the strongest is just talking to actual customers. Like, it sounds so simple, but the before and after of my projects, before and after talking to customers, is always just such a dramatic shift. There's been times where it's like, oh, we've tried to write a roadmap and we've like pulled past customer research, but we haven't actually gotten in the room with customers. And those roadmaps are always just so much worse than the ones that come right after we get a chance to actually meet with customers and talk to them, hear their tone of voice and what they're struggling with, and what they are enjoying. There's one research we did recently. So I think there's also both, like, I really enjoy when I get a chance to talk to customers in person, but as Redfin's grown, we've also hired more researchers to take on doing some of this foundational research. So partnering with the research team to dig into some of those questions. One we asked recently that I just found really interesting was we asked a question about what the biggest challenges people experience in home buying is right now. And my research partner sat down with, I think, like 10 customers and did this activity where we had all these different challenges, things like, finding a home that meets my criteria, or figuring out how much a home is actually going to cost each month once I move in. And then she had all the participants sort these different challenges along a spectrum from like happy/exciting to sad/frustrating, and then talk about why they put each of those challenges in each of those buckets, or along that spectrum. And I found it so revealing to hear just how people talked about those challenges and what things were unexpected. Like, we've heard a lot that people, are confused by the process. But it turns out after we dug in on this exercise, it's less about sort of how to get started, which is the assumption we made, and more about like the details of like what offers will actually win, or how do we actually get from, making an offer to closing on a house, the much later part of the funnel. So getting that chance to like actually talk to people and hear the things that they are struggling with, and hear them speak to and follow up on those particular thoughts, is just like, has been such a foundational part of our understanding of what customers need.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like that's such a cool way to like have a customer bucket their experience, like from searching to like, buying something, like how you're happy versus sad scale. Like at Apptentive, we love like the love, don't love like kind of scale too. And like, thank you for sharing that. It's really cool. And follow-up question I had was like, is it typical when you're engaging with customers, like you're doing it at like how do you engage with them in various segments of their like buying experience, right? Like, do you typically talk to them at the very end, or do you like try to tap into them like maybe when they're in the middle of their buying experience and you want to like really feel their like maybe enjoyment or frustration?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think this is one of the things that gets interesting with Redfin, because our sales cycle is so long. There's so many parts along the customer experience, from when you first start thinking about buying a home to start actually touring houses, to meeting with your agent, to committing to working with an agent, to making an offer, to buying the house, to closing, to everything after closing. So there's so many different points where people have just radically different sets of challenges. And so for a long time, a lot of our research was focused on the agent relationship, because that's how Redfin makes its money, is working with agents. And so a priority for our research team was understanding how people related to our agents. And so recently we started doing more research earlier on, before people start touring or making offers. And so we try to get, different researchers will focus on different parts of that funnel. But the particular focus, we just got a new researcher hired to focus on those earlier stages. And it's just been really fascinating to learn. One challenge that we found really interesting is it's much harder to get people who are really early in the process, because they're just much less likely to be engaged enough to want to, spend an hour or half an hour interviewing with you. So a lot of times our research gets skewed towards people later in the funnel. And so one big thing we're working on is how do we make sure that we get that even distribution of people even earlier in the process, so that we can hear all feedback equally.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing that you're trying to balance it out across all parts of the journey, and thank you for sharing that. Jeffrey, I would love to hear from your side.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to information, I think Doug and Katie, they touch a very good point. In my org, right, I think it's about the golden triangle. It's about time, resource, and budget in this case. And then I think there's no shortage information out there, but it's like timing is super critical. At what time do you get information to help move forward? And one thing that we're learning is that in anything, like even nowadays, or anything that is more than 3 months old, it's obsolete, it's outdated, right? So if you think about all the focus group study they've done in the past, come to leading to this product decision now, and then taking out 6 to 8 months to push the product out, that is the product you are shipping right now is already a year and a half old, based on decision you collected. And right now that is, we're moving at lightning speed. So I think, with the tool we have right now, how do you collect the right information, be able to use that to input, and be able to, do the agile, I think is super critical. And I think, Doug and Katie, they touch on that is as a product manager, I think there's something that you want to treasure and be able to out there and keep refreshing information as part of decision making, and also prioritization as well.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad you mentioned the triangle, and like being able to like balance those, right? And like, especially when you're working on large initiatives, like being able to get feedback quickly, when you're working on like a multi-quarter or like a large initiative is really important. So Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, I would love to go into like the next step of this. So all of you are getting all this feedback from your customers, right? And you're probably getting flooded with a ton of feedback. Doug, you're doing so many surveys. Kid, you're like reaching out to your customers at all parts of the journey. And Jeffrey, you're making sure you want to get something out quickly. Like, how do you take in all of that product feedback and then actually put it into your roadmap? Like, how do you prioritize stuff? How do you figure out like this is the right things for us to focus on? Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
And I can go first this time. So that is all about trading horses, because prioritization, one thing that we do and we are good at doing is we'll set up a roadmap in the beginning of the year, and then we try to execute against the roadmap that we establish in the beginning. But things changed. You have fly-ins, and because you have the competitor and things, that will force you to make change. But often it's when you go to a table and you want to make a product decision and prioritize things higher versus what was put in there, they always need to have some data to back it up. And I think whoever can come with a data that can proven to be value and also make sense, we are likely to win the the conversation and be able to price something higher. So I think that's the way how things get done, and I'll encourage all the product managers to do the same. Is to use the data to back it up, and then the data that is most as recent as possible. That I think that will make a big difference.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Being data driven takes away some of the emotion of it as well. Like, okay, what should we work on? There's all these things. And when you have the data to back it up, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Jeffrey, for that. Doug, Katie, would love to hear from your side.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The taking away the emotion is certainly important, and we have lots of data that we mine in terms of customer interactions using Google Analytics and all the interactions that we track directly with the app behaviors, like saving an offer, redeeming an offer, what have you. But I think one thing that because T-Mobile is so laser focused on the customer, you can't remove the emotion entirely, and so sentiment is really important for us. And so there's obviously the traditional things like brand sentiment and NPS and satisfaction, those types of things we do monitor. But something we've been doing more lately is, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, is looking at our App Store reviews and the verbatims that we see coming in from customers around what are they saying and how are they saying it, and using this to help uncover opportunities we may have from an operation standpoint within the product itself. Sometimes, certainly it informs our partnerships and our business development as well. But specifically, somebody from my team now is mining these surveys every single month and creating the buckets and the language and the things and meeting with our product managers to go through that feedback and find themes and pull out, like we have a maybe a recurring, the app's not working, I can never get it to load. These things we're not hearing directly in the moment. They may not be calling our customer care team or interacting with us on social. So, we missed some of those one-to-one interactions. But if we can start to see and then do our best to then go back into the logs and figure out, is there something happening that we're just not aware of because we're not hearing about it in real time? And so this is something we've just started in the last month or two that I hope will be really fruitful to help inform either enhancements or bug fixes on the end-to-end experience that we're bringing to customers.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Doug. Yeah, it seems like I can only imagine the amount of data you're going through with the amount of surveys you're doing and trying to find themes in that. So yeah, it seems like you're all doing an awesome job. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Katie, would love to hear from your side.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, and this is, one of the things that I've learned a lot about how to incorporate customer feedback into a roadmap and also to prioritize that roadmap effectively. One thing that I've learned over the last few years as I've become more senior in my role is really to start with the end in mind. So one of the things I worked on a roadmap when I was a little bit more junior on a previous team, and we basically went through it by I spent most of my time trying to advocate for like, here's why this product matters. Here's why we should invest in it. Here's why it matters to users. And all of that was totally valid. But then the roadmap part of it was really took a list of like all the ideas we'd had and then sat down and said, okay, which ones of these, like, how do I categorize them into like similar ideas? And then how do I think about which category is the most important? And basically ended up sorting all of our previous ideas from best to worst. And it was like, our roadmap is to do them from best to worst. And like, that was fine. Like we got stuff done, but it didn't give that sort of inspiring vision about where we want to go that would really give clarity to why we were going after these things. So the second roadmap that I worked on in this role was basically, we had one project out of that, one pretty major project out of that previous roadmap that just like didn't go as well as we thought it would. It kind of just like didn't really do anything after investing a fair amount of time in it. And so we said, okay, we need to step back and think about really how we want to go forward and whether we have the right plan in mind. And so for that, we did a series of customer interviews that I think were just really foundational for us. My design partner and I interviewed, I think, like a dozen customers and just asked open-ended questions about like, how do you use our product? Like, what's challenging about it? Not just our product, but Redfin overall. And we basically pulled out a few themes from that about like a few different ways that customers had issues with our product and kind of like line that up with other feedback we'd heard. And I distilled it down to like a couple key problems that people had with our product. And then this broader theme about how does our particular product fit into Redfin's overall vision. And so then my design partner and I basically just sat down and designed over the course of a few weeks, designed what we thought our future version of our product could look like that would incorporate all of these frustrations that customers had and our broader vision for the product. And so like, you know, in 2 years, this is what Redfin could look like. And then we went to prioritize that. Instead of just kind of like sorting stuff from best to worst, we said, okay, what is absolutely critical to build between here and that vision? Like what is, you know, cut out everything extraneous and just say, we have to solve these 3 customer problems and we have to build a cohesive experience. What is the minimum that we could do to get there that would still be a good product? And cut out all the fluff and lined it up into what we would do by order that, you know, depended on the thing before it, and turned that into our roadmap. And that was just much more compelling for the people working on it and much more clear for prioritization to say, we have these 3 customer problems. This is what we have to do to get there. And there's like no other way to get to the vision that we want to get to. So yeah, having that clear end in mind, based on customer research, based on what customers want to experience, has been the most helpful for me in prioritizing roadmaps.
Thank you for sharing that, Kate. That's so cool. I mean, just also hearing the evolution of like your roadmap changing over time was really helpful for me to hear as well. And like, you know, going towards more of a theme based and like, you know, being able to like think about it holistically with the end in mind. Really helpful insights. Thanks for sharing that. So actually, I'm now going to kind of transition into more looking at the Q&A that's coming in through here. So thank you for all answering the questions that I had scheduled here. So let me take a look at what we're seeing here from the listeners. So, so one thing I'm hearing from Bryce is, so are your companies seeing the remote trend impacting attraction or retention rates, or do you see your team shifting to a more remote trend as well, you know, with last year?
Yeah, I could talk about Redfin. So we've definitely seen like, you know, there's a lot of change in the industry in general. But the plan that we've established is essentially to have a hybrid system going forward where people, you know, work a few days in the office and a few days at home. I think that's pretty standard. It seems like that's where a lot of companies are going. But one thing that's been really interesting is we have also carved out roles that will be fully remote and have an option for any role to be fully remote. And one of the things that we've been able, that has really given us is it's given us an opportunity to hire people in cities outside of our headquarters in Seattle, and then our satellite headquarters in San Francisco and in Frisco, Texas, which means that we're able to hire and retain a much more diverse set of candidates, not just people who want to live in, you know, those mostly coastal cities. And so we're able to just build a much more diverse and a much stronger team by having that opportunity to not say you have to live in one of these particular cities. So it's been really good for us to have sort of the industry in general open up more to remote work and to be able to basically to build the tools by forcing everyone to work remote. We've had to like learn how to do remote effectively. And so I think in the long run, it will be really positive for both Redfin in particular and in the industry overall to have more flexibility.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Katie. And Jeffrey and Doug, on your side, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. Yeah, from a marketing perspective, again, that's my side. It's a similar answer to Katie's, which is, a hybrid or, different versions of remote and internal. One thing that's happened for T-Mobile in the last, year and a half is that we merged with Sprint. And Sprint is headquartered in Kansas City, and we also have a giant, central office in Frisco, Texas, as well. Now we have Reston, Virginia, and so like T-Mobile is, by nature of its growth, has created multiple hubs of business activity, and we have regional sales offices across the country. So we've kind of morphed, I would say, into something where, as long as we want people to be somewhat close to some sort of a regional office, ideally, so that there's still human connection and people have a place to go, and they're not obligated to carve out a home office space. But I would say the answer to that question is a lot different for most of us than it was, a year and a half ago. It's just interviewing a candidate and they're asking about relocation and if it's required, and it's not my role. So I said, it's not for me to answer that, but I would say that I probably would have answered the question a lot differently before. And I think, is Katie, your point about attracting a more diverse pool, or maybe people who aren't as capable or interested in moving to some of our hubs, is, makes a lot of sense. I think there's also a counter effect, which is that now we're competing for not only against the local talent pool, like, you guys are in Seattle, so it's Microsoft and T-Mobile and Amazon and Starbucks or whatever the big five are, but now we're competing against the whole country because everybody's moving to remote work. So if we want to increase our local talent base, we're having to compete against the United States rather than just the Seattle area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, and pretty soon it's gonna be like outside of the United States too, as well, right? Like just the whole world. So
yeah, true.
Yeah. Right. Nice. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Doug. Jeffrey, anything you want to add on your side?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, this whole COVID thing has definitely changed the dynamic about how people are coming together and work in the same location, or via the conference call. But I think this question is quite complicated. If you ask me this question a year ago and now, I'll probably give you two different perspectives. But I'm bringing back to, there's a different part for this question. If you're asking about the tech people who just need a computer to code, and I think working remote might be okay because you can be anywhere, you can be in Hawaii and you'll be just fine. But when it comes to the product manager, if you put the product management head on, if you work in the office and you work for so long, it's between you, the computer, and then the wall, right, at home. And sometimes product manager, you need that opportunity to bounce ideas, and the opportunity may not sometimes beyond just on a Zoom call for 5-10 minutes. Sometimes you may run to somebody in the kitchen, you talk about something and say, hey, did you know like another team is doing on A, B, C, and D, that water cooler conversation you used to have, or the extra minutes that you hang out together in a conference room after the meeting. Sometimes that helps, or chit chat over, like chatting over lunchtime, that, so I don't know if, as a product manager, you still find opportunity to have that time back and put some time, to socialize and talk about it. I think that is super critical. Otherwise, you'll be a product manager working in a silo at home and thinking about all these different things. And sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it can be, will have a negative impact in terms of product role mapping and ideation as well.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well, Jeffrey. We're trying to balance that too, of like, coming into the office every once in a while just to like still whiteboard together, or using, tools like to kind of help, make that easier, like with Zoom, like tools like Figma or something else that have gotten more remote and friendly over time to make it kind of easy to like, collaborate together. So totally agree with you there. So I have 2 more questions I'd love to go through. So I got a question from Laura, which is interesting. So my background is mostly in merchandising or buying. Earlier this year, I made the transition to a program manager role. Just saw that question. Give me 1 second here. So I made a transition to a program manager role focused on the digital customer experience. I'd love to know what are some important skills or qualities I should focus on developing as a program manager that translate well into a product manager role. I see that as my next step down the road. So I think, would love to hear your thoughts. If, we've all come from various backgrounds, it sounds like, and would love to kind of hear like, what advice would you have for Laura from going from a program manager role to like a product manager role? And Doug, on your side, like, I would just love to hear your thought on like how someone would do that on like going to a product marketing route for anyone else that's interested as well. So.
I can start. So I think one of the things, so as I mentioned, I transitioned from marketing, from a marketing specialist role into product. And as I was in the process of starting to transition, like before I actually made the switch, I was still thinking about it. I started going to the working sessions for the product team working in the area that I was in. And so working sessions, for people who don't use those, I don't know if that's a universal thing, are basically just a chance for everyone to sit down and look at a product that we're building and talk about how it could be better, what are the strengths, different ways of going about solving different customer problems. So I got a chance to start listening into those. And the thing that I found most interesting and most useful was the way that people talked about how customers experienced our products. And like in retrospect, this seems a lot more simple than it felt at the time. But there was a way that people spoke about customers by really saying, like, sitting in customer shoes, how will they experience this product and how does it fit into their daily life and their journey and their experience of buying a house, and really centering on how will a customer experience this product. And that was just a way of talking about customers and a way of talking about products that I hadn't experienced quite that explicitly before. And that was like, honestly, one of the reasons why I wanted to switch to being a PM was because I just found that kind of conversation so exciting. Not that other people don't have it, but I just really enjoyed talking about it with that group of people. So I think in general, thinking about everything you do from the lens of who's going to experience this and how will they experience it, and getting used to thinking in that way will be one of the most important skill sets to develop, from my experience at least.
Thank you for
sharing. I'll jump in and add. I think, again, I talked about my kind of variety of roles that led me to my current role in marketing. But I would say that as having come from program management, there's organizational structure and a systematic view that comes with being a program manager. I mean, you're looking at your KPIs and how do you what are all the projects that can feed to improvement. Those are transferable in almost any environment, business, I think, especially to product management, which is having a structure and organization around how you think about what you're working on, and you figure out what are the inputs and who are the stakeholders, and how do you measure the effectiveness of each of the things that you're going to launch and so on. So I think you're probably already halfway there, and I'll defer to my product management peers here to tell to say how do you get that extra mile into product, but I think program management is definitely a great base to start with.
Yeah, I can chime in. Depending on what your career desire is, and then your personality and passion, there will be between program manager and product manager, right? The way how I see it is between, do you want to be a CEO of the company or do you want to be the SVP of an org? And I think that's what it is, because product managers can be more focused on a particular area. So normally the natural progression is you become a good product manager, then you eventually grow up to the program manager, where you get to touch more areas, but you don't have a day-to-day operation and say in the product decision, because you leave that to the product manager of that particular discipline. But if your passion is to be a product manager, then I guess find the area that you're passionate about, whether it's like in your org, and then try to learn, right? Try to shadow the thing and participate and then explain to the leadership in the org and try to learn as much as you can, and of course make recommendations along the way as when you're a product manager head on, and the way then you can move to the product manager role. That'll be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey, for sharing that, and thank you, Doug, as well. So I think we're almost up on time here. I know there's some unanswered questions. We'll definitely follow up with you after the chat. But I just want to say thank you everyone for all your wonderful questions. I apologize we weren't able to answer all of them, but if you included your name, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly. And if you find you have more questions later, please feel free to just respond to our follow-up email directly. We'll get that answered for you. And if you're interested in learning more about Apptentive and how we can help you capture, analyze, and act on customer feedback, please reach out to us directly at info@apptentive.com or feel free to message us on LinkedIn. And just want to say thank you again to our three amazing product panelists. Like, just it's been such a fun conversation today, just talking with all three of you. And just really want to thank you all for just joining this morning. And yeah, hope you all have a great rest of your day. And take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.